It's May 28, 2020. This is Roqe. Sibling songsters. If you're someone of Iranian descent somewhere in the world, it's a good bet that at some point you've heard the innovative sounds and social commentary of Abjeez, two sisters in their band originally from Iran and then all over the globe. Today, Melody in New York, Safoura in Stockholm, Sweden join me together for a very Roqe chat. But first, an acclaimed environmental scientist who, despite still being in his 30s, has already gone from being a deputy vice president in Iran to returning to the diaspora in a position at Yale. Kaveh Madani joins me for a feature chat. This is stories from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Roqe. Welcome to episode number 13 of Roqe. Hope you're all doing okay out there. Hope you're all mizun. We have a really big show for you today. This is our biggest in terms of length so far, in fact. And I'm surrounded. I have Roqe team members all around here in socially distanced fashion, of course. Behind the glass, groovy Shaya.
Hello.
Hello, Khubi.
Yes.
I think you're lying because you from across the glass I can see it was a long, potentially rough night.
Yes. Actually, I have a headache, but I'm fine.
You're okay.
Yeah,
I'm glad
fine.
you're okay.
Yeah.
Captain Reza is here.
Oh, is that my new title?
That's your new title.
Oh,
I was waiting.
One hell of an improvement.
I was waiting until we're. What's it an improvement from?
Let's not get into it.
Right. Captain Reza. Captain Reza is here. How are you, sir?
Very well. Oh, thanks, Shaya. Thanks, Jian.
And in studio, albeit on the other side of the studio, is Keon. Hi, Keon.
Hi, Jian. Did you notice our names rhyme?
I did actually. It had occurred to me that Jian and Keon rhyme.
Did you plan that?
Well, I couldn't plan what your name is. That's already your name.
Did you talk to my mom before this?
So you've been coordinating with Sarah on social media, and you have the letters for today. You're going to be doing letters of the week in about an hour from now, yes?
Yes, and I can't wait to read some of them. Pretty funny stuff, I must say. Mostly making fun of you, but I'll skip those. I'll make you look good.
No, you can read those. That's okay. You're also here because you're an Abjeez fan, right?
I am, actually. I think they're doing something different. I mean, I always try to listen for new music, especially from the Iranian diaspora. So I like that they're sisters, too. That's interesting. I can't imagine ever getting into a band with my brothers, so that's different.
Right. Do you say diaspora? What did you just say?
How do you say it? I always say diaspora.
I think it's diaspora.
I always say things the way they spell. So you're right, diaspora. I mean, I can't argue that.
Sounds like
Thank
you're
you for
perfect for
correcting
this
me.
position to read
You know
the
what?
letters.
It's not too late to fire me.
I am very happy to have both Melody and Safoura from Abjeez coming up in about an hour from now. Melody in New York, Safoura in Stockholm, kind of around the world. Really nice to have you here, Keon. We'll get to you in about an hour. Captain Reza, Groovy Shaya, we're all here. Let's get to our first guest, though, because I've been looking forward to this interview as well. You know, for the majority of Iranian expats who have reached academic heights in the West after the 1979 revolution, migration has been a one-way ticket. Even for academics who have stayed clear of Iran's contentious politics, the notion of returning to the old country is daunting for many obvious reasons. But you might say my first guest today was, albeit briefly, the most prominent exception to this rule. In September 2017, Kaveh Madani, a faculty member at Imperial College London and an alumni of Lund University in Sweden and then the University of California, returned to Iran to serve as his country's deputy vice president for the environment. What transpired in 12 perilous months that followed is the stuff of suspense movies. Fortunately for us, he got out, and he lives to tell the tale. He was born in Iran and first left for his studies at the age of 22 and went on to become an acclaimed expert on environment and water supply. Last month, Kaveh was selected by the American Geophysical Union to receive the Hydrologic Sciences Early Career Award. Kaveh is a writer, a professor, and now a senior fellow at the Department of Political Science at Yale University. Kaveh Madani from Yale joins me today. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's nice to talk to you again, and I hope you've been keeping safe during COVID.
I'm trying. I think we are having a much better condition than many other people on this planet, so I'm thankful.
I'm glad you're okay. I would be remiss on a program aimed at identity and the Iranian diaspora if I do not get into your harrowing recent episode of becoming a high-level member of the Iranian government and then needing to quit and return to the United States. But let's start with the environment, because there's a lot of conflicting information, it feels like, about the environment in the era of COVID. And there are some that claim that this pandemic is a great thing in terms of amplifying somehow our appreciation for the natural world and curbing urban pollution and destruction. This is due to lockdowns and quarantines. You wrote a piece in Medium in March called "Can COVID-19 Create a Turning Point in the Fight Against Climate Change?" So what do you think? Is COVID some sort of blessing dressed up as the apocalypse?
I don't think it's a blessing, but like any other extreme event and crisis, it can create opportunities. But the question to ask here is that if the changes that we are seeing today are going to be permanent or not. Yes, greenhouse gas emissions have dropped. We're using less oil. We are now flying. We are doing a lot of things online. We're not using our cars as often as before in many countries, even though the price of gasoline has dropped so much. But are these things going to be permanent? I'm afraid not, unless we take necessary action. So we have to enable the future and do things which are good for the planet. Otherwise, experience shows us that once the economy of nations gets worse, is if people get unemployed, if factories fail, if businesses go bankrupt, then they have a big crisis, and they want to avoid that. And when they want to avoid that, then they loosen the environmental restrictions. Right now, we are seeing things happening, with the U.S. EPA and Donald Trump. So we would see the same thing in some other countries, and countries try to catch up and then kind of compensate for the period of inactivity, for the period of low production, and then take advantage of lower oil prices and so on. So we might see a big boost actually in the environmental footprint once this crisis is over and we again fight for putting more money into our pockets.
Let me turn it around and come at it from a different angle, and that is, think about how to say this. Should we blame the way we treat or we have treated the environment for COVID? In other words, as an environmentalist or an environmental scientist, do you see any correlation between human-created environmental calamities or situations and these recent pandemics such as bird flu, such as SARS, and now, of course, COVID-19?
If we want to, talk about easy correlations, yes, this virus has jumped into our environment, has jumped on humans because we got too close to the animals, right? We started eating them, and even in the last 2 decades, we have had a number of pandemics, having the same kind of routes. One
Right.
from camels, and then another from bats, and the same thing. But these pandemics and viruses and diseases have been with us for a long, long time. This is again another opportunity for us to think about our diet, to think about what we are doing to the planet. But it's not as unique as many people say. But would it make us think about what we are doing? Yes. Does it result in a shift in behavior? I'm afraid not on its own. Without developing new institutions, I don't think that's going to change our behavior. Once this incident is over, you would have your steak and enjoy your food. You would do things as before, and you might even care less about some of the warnings that we environmentalists talk about, because you remember the point in time in modern times that all of us were so close to death and we had lost hope. So if you know that another incident like this is likely in your lifetime, you might tell me, shut up, don't tell me about the future of this planet. I want to enjoy the rest of my life. Who knows what's going to happen to me in a few years? And all you scientists did not project something of this magnitude, something this deadly in your worst projections of the future. And none of you saw this coming. So how can I trust you?
You wrote another piece, Kaveh, recently talking about how, related to COVID, and talking about how the world needs to come together to combat this pandemic. And you ended it quite beautifully. In the end of the editorial, you quote the 13th century Persian poet Sa'di with this passage: "Human beings are members of a whole, in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain." What does that passage mean to you?
That's the optimality that I'm after. And as someone who has dedicated his career to the environment, I have the obligation and the mission of reminding people about the importance of working together and addressing problems together, about reminding people about of our interconnectedness, the interconnectedness of our societies, the fact that water drops or carbon emission, don't recognize our political boundaries. The fact that we have to address the problems together, no matter where in Iran we are, or no matter where in the world we are, we have problems that we share. So that's my mission. That's when it comes to education, outreach, telling people, creating ambitious target, encouraging people to make a move. So at the same time, thinking about how to materialize or put the words of Sa'di into action is something I'm doing as a scientist. And even in my political job, I was trying to do things along that line.
I don't want to get too far off track, but I remember in a previous conversation you and I had, you talked about the racial or the ethnic or the national lines of interest around environmental concerns, that they're not necessarily always universal. But when I think about something like climate change, I mean, isn't the whole point of climate change, isn't that global? Isn't the ozone layer over top of Tehran and Toronto and Tbilisi, doesn't that define universal?
Sure, it is, and lots of other things are universal. But if we just single out one problem and then expect the nations to trust us and come fight for that specific cause, I don't think we get anywhere. We have to also respect the conditions of different people. I'll give you an example. When I was in office in Iran as the deputy head of Iran's Department of Environment, so we have lots of meetings about the problems we have in the country. I'm an environmental scientist. Some of my other colleagues are also like university professors. So they understand the problems. Now it comes to the action time. What do you do about this polluting factory or this petrochemical or this industrial farm, this city and that? Every time you want to make a decision, you're thinking about how many people would get unemployed, how your production would be affected. So then you have a trade-off between unemployment, hunger, then addressing greenhouse gas emissions. And then you think that what if I do it and others don't do it? And reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's about the future impact. And can I make a sacrifice for the future and make people unemployed today and have them starve for the sake of the future. And then is this climate justice that we are after? The other thing is people in the developing world always think that, okay, we didn't create this problem. If you look at the cumulative emissions of, for example, the United States, UK, and some other countries in the West, they're the ones who created climate change, right? It's a global problem, yes, but the ones who created the problem also benefited from it. Their societies are advanced. They're in a better condition. Even when it comes to the point of climate change and its impacts, their societies are more resilient. But now they are telling us to stop selling oil, to stop doing this, to reduce our emissions, to stop our development and adopt renewables and so on. So then it's a point where you say, listen, I have so many other problems and so many other priorities. How about my food? How about my water? How about my jobs? I'm not saying that I'm not going to address climate change. I believe in it, and I know that my nation is a victim. But if you want my help, also help me. So give me a hand. Pay me, bear the cost, take responsibility for what you have done. And why is that important? Because the problems we have in Iran, the problems we have in India, the problems we have in Afghanistan, China, in many parts of Africa and South America are very different from the problems you have in the U.S.
So
or
oftentimes
Canada.
what we think are the most dire environmental issues are we're socialized to believe that because of where we live in the world or where our concern might lie.
Yeah. When is the last time you in Toronto have been concerned about air pollution and put a mask on walking outside thinking that, I might get cancer or, if I have asthma, I might die?
Well, that one we do talk about air pollution in Toronto, but we don't talk that much about worrying about where we're going to get our water. And so that's one that I can absolutely not relate to.
Air pollution. Do you put masks on for air pollution in Toronto? Are you worried about dust storms in Toronto?
No.
Are you worried about major deforestation in Toronto? But even when it comes to, for example, the gas pipeline, you see that the Canadians, modern, developed, in good economic conditions, they're still doing the things that we environmentalists are telling the rest of the world, about avoiding, avoid fossil fuels.
And a lot of people have problems with that in Canada. Certainly environmentalists do.
It is true, but I'm saying that when it comes to action, then the policymakers of the modern world also implement things. If the American society, again, when it comes to average economic condition, GDP, and everything, they're doing much better than the rest of the world. How concerned are the average American citizens about the environment? When they vote for the next president of the United States, where is climate change? How much climate change is a driving factor in votes? So when you don't see environmental factors playing such a huge role in the West where you live, don't expect the environmental conditions to be the most important, significant factor for those who are living elsewhere.
Well, what would the reaction be amongst people in the know, let alone the population as well, in India or in Afghanistan you cited, or in Iran, I suppose, I was going to say Greta Thunberg, but we don't want to, she's a teenager. I don't necessarily want to take aim at her, but Michael Moore or Al Gore or the climate change movement, which declares itself or wants to declare itself as an international movement and an international concern. What is the reaction to that in places in the world, in other places in the world that might have different priorities that you've just outlined?
Climate change is one of the many byproducts of unsustainable development. Climate change is one product: deforestation, water bankruptcy, desertification, dust storms, air pollution. All of these problems have come with unsustainable development. So it's a mystery for me why we have singled out climate change as the problem, and we are pushing for that. So if you go around the world, I've been to places in Africa. We're talking to the African kids who spend hours out of school or on their daily lives for collecting water. So for a bucket, to get a bucket full and then take it for kilometers and walking for kilometers with that heavy bucket of water. shall I talk to that kid about climate change as the major thing?
Right.
Is it even fair to do that? And is it fair to expect the people who are suffering from so many other things to think about climate change as their most important thing?
A tremendous eye-opener for me, even in this moment around COVID, was Nicholas Kristof about a month ago in the New York Times wrote about the fact that the prescriptions for how we're supposed to deal with COVID are sort of top down from the Western world as well, or from the developed world, I suppose. The idea that you have to wash your hands for 20 seconds constantly throughout the day. He pointed out that there's billions of people in the world who don't actually have the facilities to wash their hands in their own homes. So the prescription can't even work for those people, even if they were to want to be diligent about it, right?
And remember, like, this is not the mistake that would say, like, some ignorant people who have not traveled the world would make. You know, back then, the UN Secretary General even made a video of washing hands, and he got blamed for the same thing. And that person, you expect him to know this, right? To know that there are billions of people who don't have access to tap water and proper sanitation, and they don't even have shelters. Like, you know, you say, stay home. Like, okay, I stay at home. Like, which home? How many, you know, this small place that we are in, this slum? Do you mean, like, we don't have so many rooms to separate ourselves from each other. And then the other thing is, okay, we claim, again, being ideal and sitting in our homes in North America and not having sympathy for the rest of the world and thinking that we are blessed that COVID-19 is here. The other thing we say is this virus doesn't discriminate between the poor and the rich. That's a joke. Environmental problems also discriminate between the poor and the rich. Why? Because right now it's proven to us that the amount of money you have has a good correlation, a strong correlation with your resilience. If your pocket is full, you can stay home longer. And this is, again, it goes against all of the things we have been talking about. That with the current system that we have, in most places, you don't have the government of Canada to give the people $2,000 a month and ask them to stay home and be safe. In many other places, COVID-19 means hunger. It means poorer, worse health conditions. It means worse economic conditions. Now we will have another wave of COVID-19 impacts, which would target the food sector, the food trades around the world. So we will see famine. We will see problems of that kind. And these are not the things that we are worried about. Even in the early days of the COVID-19 outbreak, there were environmental activists who wrote articles blaming the media for overshadowing climate change debates and climate change fight by talking too much about COVID-19. COVID-19 is just a virus and it's killing some people, but those people are from somewhere else. I don't want to turn this into, a south, north, or west, east.
I was going to say info at roqemedia.com if you disagree with Kaveh, because I can imagine there's people listening who may be the climate change activists who might get their noses out of joint with what you're saying and say, well, no, that is the most important issue. What are you going on about?
Yeah.
Right?
The thing is, so if they have to go and check my records, I have fought for these things. But when I was in the room, I try to remind, for example, people, the world leaders, that, listen, guys, we get too busy negotiating the targets and setting ambitious targets and goals that we forget that we need means to get to those points, right? So I'm the advocate of the rights and thoughts and concerns of the developing world in the West. This doesn't mean that we have lack of, know-how, technology, lots of other things, and leaders who have, different priorities, right? So, for example, Iran, we build a missile. We said we want to take over even the space, but we don't build a water treatment plant for part of the population, or we don't install air filters on our cars, and then we affect people. So that, we are not here to justify that sort of action or inaction, but to remind people that things are easy on paper. If you want to have an impact, you have to understand the barriers, you have to understand how societies think and what their priorities are, and then think from their, put yourself in their shoes and try to come up with a solution.
Okay, one more question on related to COVID, Kaveh. And I know I can't keep you forever, but there's a lot I want to get to. So let me just ask you one more around COVID though, and Iran, because you obviously get asked about Iran. And in a recent interview with Science magazine, you described Iran's response to the pandemic, to COVID-19, as, and I'm quoting you, a high-stakes battle between science and conspiracy theories. And I read that and I thought, my first reaction was, hell yeah, Iran, always like that. That sounds right. Then I realized this could also be a way to describe the American response. In other words, isn't that a global description today? I mean, wouldn't you agree that conspiracy theories around the source of the virus are just as viral, if you will, in the West?
Absolutely, and I think that must be an eye-opener. A lot of things are similar. Yes, in some places, some of the conspiracy theories are driven by ideology or religious beliefs and so on, and that's not different so you have Muslim communities doing that, you have Jewish communities doing the same, you have Christian communities, so it's not even about the type of religion. So ideology and religious belief can have an impact, but also how educated and informed your societies are. So a lot of arguments that you hear in, for example, Washington and Tehran are the same. So let me give you an example. So one of my accusations when the hardliners want to call me a spy is that they're blaming me for paying too much attention to the Paris Agreement and saying that I wanted to ratify the Paris Agreement to limit Iran's development, to make global commitments,
right,
international commitments, so they cannot continue developing at the pace that they are developing right now. Who else blamed the Paris Agreement using the same
right,
explanation or reasoning? Washington, D.C., Donald Trump also said that this hoax is there to limit development, to create additional costs for the U.S. and so on and so on. So the argument was exactly the same thing. So on one side you had a person blonde with suit and tie, and on the other side you have people with hairy faces and wearing some other things. One speaking Persian, the other speaking English, but the way of thinking was the same. So the same thing about COVID-19. All the conspiracy theories about COVID-19. Now, if COVID-19 had not gone out of Iran, we were still blaming the Iranian government for what they have done. I'm not defending what they have done. They must have done this, and must have managed it in a much better way. They still have to release data and be transparent about it. We are dealing with people's lives. What they have done is horrible. But remember that in early March, there were articles blaming Iran for making the outbreak global,
right,
for saying how terrible they are. How many of the authors who wrote those articles have apologized for their misjudgment, or have they said that, we were ignorant at that point, we thought it would be Iran, but now
I don't think any
look
have.
at it.
They don't apologize for that, no. But there were also articles saying that millions and millions and millions of people in Iran have died, and Iran's not being honest about that. And I'm assuming that we can now tell that that's not totally true. And you've written about this, the death counts in Iran, et cetera. But at the same time, am I wrong to trust the Canadian stats on death counts more than I do the Iranian stats?
No, I think we have good reasons for developing these biases, and these biases are formed based on it's based on your level of trust, based on what your governments have done in the past. So history matters. How you have behaved in the past matters. You cannot change behavior overnight, and you won't see people trusting you overnight. So automatically we always look at the data that the Iranians release with some level of suspicion. And many times this is a good thing because it helps us ask questions and so on. But sometimes we get too much, I think, out of our way to come up with a story to say something is false or wrong, or they did it intentionally, so my problem with that is once you say everything is wrong or they're lying the whole time, then the way you fight or the way you lead active groups would be different. So the numbers, do we know that the numbers are wrong? I think most of us agree that the numbers are wrong. Do we know how wrong they are? I don't think we do. So that is the problem. Now, if you don't know how wrong they are, would that justify you coming out and saying that Iran, for example, the number of people who died in Iran by March 10 was 8 million people? I don't think that's a fair game. Because even if you know that there's a lack of data, still you have to put science as a base of judgment. You have to be honest about what you're doing and your calculations and so on. So you have people on both sides who create conspiracy theories. So conspiracy theories, as you correctly said, is not the problem of Iran. It's not the problem of the Islamic Republic. Even Iran's enemies have come up with their conspiracy theories.
It is a problem
and
of
when you
Iran,
have
but not solely.
Coming up with conspiracy theories, the truth is lost. People lose hope, and then the argument and fights are more destructive than constructive.
I mean, I do want to do an entire show episode just based on Iranians and conspiracy theories. So I'm not exonerating us from conspiracy theories, but it just occurred to me that I'm hearing as much of that in the American media and certain parts of the American media, et cetera, as might be emerging from Iran. I have to. So let's get into this. Your time in the government in Iran. I mean, this was one of the major turning points in your career, or maybe your life. Your decision to return to Iran and join the Rouhani administration as the deputy head of Iran's Department of Environment in 2017. This decision, of course, set in motion a cycle of events that eventually led to your early resignation and speedy exit from the country. I know you've been asked, Kaveh, a lot about this. Where are you at with the decision you made now? You've been called everything from wise to brave to naive to treacherous for taking that step to work with and in the Iranian government. If you could transport back to 2017, would you have made the same choice?
If I had known that they will arrest me upon arrival at the airport and they will put this ugly label of a spy on me, for sure not. If I have the same level of information and we go back in time and I ask this question from the vice president of the country, who you think you should trust, and that's what I did. Like I said, are you sure I get approved? I don't want to end up in jail. That was my question. And they approved me. Their intelligence system, security system apparently had approved me. And then, they appointed, so then the thinking on my side was, will I do it or not? Is this a bribe, actually? Because one conspiracy theory was that, they're bribing me. They want me to shut up because I'm talking too much, because I'm criticizing the system, and I've written so much about, misgovernance and bad management and so on. And then, we know that how the system is. We know that the chance of success is low. We know that it's very hard to do things, like all the negative things that I'm telling you right now in this interview.
Right.
But then there's a little chance of making positive impact. And for that, I have to make the sacrifice of moving, living in Tehran instead of London, working in that system, and then make compromises. Some of those compromises were impossible to make for me, and I stood on those lines for myself, so I didn't accept whatever they wanted me to do, and that's why I'm here, not in Tehran. But there were things that I could, give up on, and I did. And eventually I decided that, this is the first time that the Islamic Republic is making such an offer, so it's an unprecedented thing for the people of my generation, and let's give it a try. 2 years has passed, and what we know right now in my generation is that, no, it's working with the Iranians. If you don't belong to the inner circle, if you get the same offer that I got, is impossible. So that piece of information didn't exist.
We say that. We say it's impossible.
But now we know it's even worse.
We assume that. But why do you obviously you've thought about this, why do you think the hardliners in Iran ultimately, why did they view you as such a threat?
Several reasons, and I still have a hard time understanding what they're thinking of me. I'm still trying to figure out what's in their mind, and believe me, it's really hard to do that. And I kept telling my interrogators that I'm tired of thinking on your behalf and putting myself in your shoes and be the game theorist and think through the decisions and come up with something good. But I think us in the West are a threat to those who are running the show, the system, based on all these things that we say, conspiracy theories. Because if they tell me that you can, to cure your COVID-19, instead of using this drug, you have to use, camel urine, then I would react. Right? Because I'm a scientist. I can't take it. I immediately react to that thing. If they tell me that, and that was the case, our clouds are being stolen by the Israelis, and that's why we don't get rain, I react. I keep my mouth shut. I react. And the people from, a lot of us would do that. So first thing is that you're thinking based on your knowledge and not the ideology of the system, so you don't comply with that. The other thing is, for 40 years we have said down with the USA, down with the UK, and lots of things like that. And now we have an American educated person coming home, American educated British faculty coming home from Imperial College. By the way, the term Imperial also created a lot of problems on its own for me. And, coming home and people are celebrating it. So there was a huge positive reaction to this appointment. And this goes against all the things that we have promoted for a long time. So a person shaved, doesn't look like us, doesn't talk like us, and he's here and he's working, and what if we have more people like him coming back? The system, a lot of these people in the system can't even tolerate Javad Zarif, who is, to them, is a Westerner. So compare me and my thoughts with him and see.
But then why would they invite you at all? I mean, this is when there's the pockets of people who attack you in the diaspora, who say you were naive or they're angry that you did this. So it's obvious this would be a PR stunt, that they, to bring Kaveh Madani to Iran. And was there anything earnest that you saw in the invitation in the first place?
I think a big mistake we make when we interpret Iran's behavior or Tehran behavior is that we think the Islamic Republic is a consolidated unit. So every action is coordinated and every decision is based on years of planning and thought. So the fact that my story got viral and got promoted, was this a planned thing, or once the system saw a big positive reaction to my appointment, thought this is a good thing, why not they promote it? I think it was the latter. And there are people within the system who want to make changes, who want to push the envelope. So that doesn't mean that the whole system is ready for that. You always see like a thought, someone making a statement which surprises you, and someone who has worked for the system. So there are people in the system who try to push the envelope, and there are people actually who fought for my case. There were a lot of people on the same administration who didn't like me. So it wasn't only a fight between me and the IRGC, or the government and the IRGC, and it was a fight even between me and some people in the same administration who thought it's ridiculous to appoint someone who, we cannot trace back and see where he comes from. How do we know he has not been trained, he's not a spy, and so on. So I think this was the case, and I saw that there are like a few people who are inviting me and thinking this is a positive thing. Now, remember that there were other roles that were proposed, and I didn't say yes to those. I took the one which would minimize my level of conflict with some other parts of the system, because if I had ended up in Ministry of Energy or Ministry of Agriculture, I would have been on a continuous fight with those people. I tried to sit in education and outreach and those things, thinking that doing something positive, increasing the level of information, is an apolitical thing. So the argument that a lot of people are making is that if you work for that system, you're prolonging the life of that system. So if you think that way, all the doctors who are working for that system are doing so. All the teachers, whoever is doing something positive for the country is prolonging the life of this system. Right now, all the nurses and the healthcare workers who are helping the COVID-19 patients in Iran are prolonging the life of this system. So I don't think we can easily say that people should be given up on their roles and everyone must stop working for this system if we want to see a change. I think that environment must be put, like what you said, if climate change is a universal thing, Iran's environment is a national thing, and regardless of the political system, regardless of who is in charge, we need to preserve the resources. And if whoever, 40 years from now, 10 years from now, 2 years, 1 year, few months from now, there's a new administration, there's even a new regime. You want the Iranians to have access to resources, to have water and land and so on. We should put a lot of these things above politics. And honestly, I mean, this is something that I probably would surprise a lot of people if I say it, but I think in the 7 months that I worked for that system, I was much more impactful for Iran's environment that today that I'm working from miles away and my level of activity is limited to my social media.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to ask, is there a scenario? I mean, obviously there are those that believe that you can't play footsie with this regime. What were you thinking? But is there a scenario by which things could have gone different for you if you had more support? I mean, it's interesting. Not long after you left in 2018, you did an interview where you said, I blame some of my friends, prominent scientists, for staying quiet on issues related to Iran's environment. When there's one entity building a wrong narrative and selling it to the people, it's really hard to counter that if no one's speaking up. Do you wish that more people had been speaking up for you from within?
I mean, it's not about me. And I think, for example, in the case of the environmentalists in jail, they have been in jail for so long, and some of their accusations were just funny, nonsense technically. And a lot of apolitical scientists, engineers could have come in front of camera and argue and say that these claims don't make sense. When we are sure about a lie that is being promoted, we have to react. The problem I've seen, I share this with you. I remember some days I was coming home really tired, and I had a Telegram group with a bunch of friends in the US and Canada, all university professors, water professors. And I was sharing some of the social media posts about different, water-related topics in Iran. And the responses I was getting from my friends, my buddies, were like smileys and funny faces and cracking up and having fun with these stories. But those stories, I was sharing those stories to get their sympathy, not their smiley reaction. Why? Because I was telling them that these things that you think are funny and it's obvious that they're wrong are now becoming part of the narrative here. And who should debunk that? Who should fight with that? If you university professors are silent. So the children of revolution, all the people of my generation who have left Iran, I think they are not really contributing to today's Iran and future, maybe future of Iran, but to today's Iran. Now, you cannot expect everyone to do that. We talked about rationality early in this interview. So you cannot say that everyone must do something for Iran, but we can do things which doesn't take too much effort and they're not political. So a few months ago, one of my classmates from UC Davis, who's a professor now, had got a fund to do a study on Lake Rumia. He's American. And he approached me and he wanted to run a workshop, something like this. And I said, listen, you don't know you can't imagine how many workshops we have had on Lake Rumia. Instead of doing another thing, just go and create a collection of all the works we have done on Lake Rumia around the world. And he was surprised. In a few days, he got back to me and said he had collected more than 300 papers which have been written in the past few years on Lake Rumia. Uncoordinated. We don't work together. We all are doing things in our silos. And then when it comes to Lake Rumia problems, for example, Iran might come up with the story of, yes, the drought caused this or climate change. And then we write things in our papers, but we never get in front of camera to tell the Iranians that this is a big lie. We don't tweet about it. We don't do this. So my thing is not to blame them for my failure. I think that if more people like me do things and travel to Iran and do more work, more outreach work, we can push the envelope. We can change the condition. That's what we have to do. We have to change the boundaries. And there are people in the system who didn't like the idea of me getting appointed, but after a while they worked with me. And by the way, we have to talk about this because this perception that you cannot work with this regime should be further studied, because what do you want to do with that regime? Do you want to change all the things about the environment and make major environmental reforms? You cannot do it even if there is a regime change, because these things, even in the U.S. would be impossible, in the West would be impossible. But if you're thinking about tiny steps and incremental improvements, I promise that incremental improvements within the system, depending on where you're sitting, is possible. There are things that we did. There are there are people who I appointed. There are women who I appointed. There are women who I promoted. There are things that I did, and those things would have been impossible without going there. But did I change the world? Did I change Iran? No. My impact was small and very, tiny. So, but if we have a lot of us doing things, caring about Iran and doing more on Iran and try to create and draw an apolitical, scientific, technical picture of Iran, we will have a better understanding of Iran's society. We will have a better understanding of Iran's technical problems and problems in different areas, and we can provide solutions which are practical.
Let me ask you a couple of brief personal questions about that experience, and then we'll end off just talking about identity a little bit and how you self-identify. First of all, still sticking with this experience of 2017, 2018 and being in the government in Iran, and then your speedy exit, as I called it earlier, you've said in some ways your time in Tehran was the best sabbatical. Let me quote you. My time in Tehran was the best sabbatical one academic could wish for. This was a wonderful learning experience. On the other hand, I realized that I'm lucky I'm not in prison or dead. So, Kaveh, let's take the first half of that. What did you most learn from this experience on a personal level?
So they called me a spy, and I was a spy. I was a spy for the Iranian people, Iranians living abroad, on the government. I was one of those who got very close to and went inside the system and saw how things are being run. I saw that there are a lot of good people who work at different levels, and regardless of the system, who's running the system, they want to have a positive impact. They care about Iran. I saw a lot of people who didn't like, actually, the ideology of the system, but are sitting in those positions, and they're putting a lot of effort into doing positive things. So it surprised me how quickly we could get together and build some trust and get things done, and that's a very positive thing. So a lot of things that I'm talking about, or a lot of things that I talked about and got awards for, got verified actually in my experience. So it was the best sabbatical in that sense, but it was a super risky sabbatical because I could have been in jail right now, or who knows what else could have happened to me, and I would have been just a hashtag on social media.
And how scared were you in the end? By the time you left, when the walls came crumbling down in terms of the support you had within the government, how?
It was from day one. I mean, I arrived in Tehran and I got arrested. It wasn't like, being scared is something. So at the time that I signed off on this and I said I would go to Iran, I had a fear of going through these issues. But there were like moments that I thought that we won't win against these people because they're so powerful or ignorant, because they're ignorant, they're powerful, and they carry guns and they have power and they come after you. So, and they don't listen, right? A lot of my interrogation sessions were education sessions where you know that you're facing someone who doesn't understand how the world is run, and they don't know what things are happening in this part of the world, and they're accusing you, but they're, some of them are listening to you and what you tell them would educate them, but some of them come with this lens of just like they're pessimistic, and whatever you say they don't believe you because they think you're a spy. So as a spy, you have been trained to lie, you have been trained to distract, and so on. And I was fighting that. I was trying to educate. I was trying to say, okay, let me tell you this. When they arrested me upon arrival, they took control of all my emails, everything, right? Now, the IRGC has 13 years of my records, every detail of my life. This is, privacy violation. I was hurt. I didn't like this, and so on. But I said, I haven't done anything against national security, anything against my nation. So I'm not afraid of anything. They can go through this, and my thing, now thinking of being naive, is that you go through my emails and you go through my life and you realize that I'm not connected, I'm not a spy. Whereas they're still trying to find something in my emails and say, you talk to this guy who is from Israel or grew up in Israel, and then you're a spy. So you're dealing with ignorant people. This is my problem. This is what I found in Iran, that the level of ignorance is high. Yes, Iran is very educated. We have given degrees to people. We are publishing a lot of papers, in peer-reviewed journals. Or university students are doing great, and they're coming to the best universities in North America. But the level of information is low. It's not only Iran, U.S. is the same thing. That's why you get Donald Trump, and UK you get Brexit. So we have these trends everywhere. But in Iran, the cost of this is huge. So lots of opportunities are being killed by a system which doesn't know that it doesn't know, by people who don't know that they don't know. This is the problem. And they need education. They need awareness. And I'm not saying it's an easy thing, but we also need fighters who would spend time on public education, raising awareness, writing things which are about today's Iran, contemporary Iran, explaining the problems, how's the state of economy, how's the state of environment, how's the state of agriculture, provide solutions, don't put a negative lens on it, and try to come up with the stories that you like. Look at the data and what you can extract, and use the language of science. I'm not saying we shouldn't have political forces and fighters. I'm not saying we shouldn't have people on both sides. It's good. All of those can be constructive. But I think there's also a need for the children of revolution who understand that system and have been in the West. So the identity issue that we probably can speak about related to that. So these people can raise awareness, can make a connection between the two words, and can help with understanding the real Iran and help the Iranian public understand the real world. It's easy to sit down and blame, but if we only blame, then the public would lose hope. The people who would lose hope would do worse. And if you're talking about the environment, maintaining the level of hope and keeping your society positive, besides getting them scared of the bad future, is the key to promote changes.
Okay, so all of what you've just said, almost all of what you just said, leads perfectly to segue into asking you about identity. As we finish, I'm very grateful for the amount of time you're giving us. Hey, Kaveh, you've done a lot of interviews about having to leave Iran after you went there with the hopes of wanting to create change around environmental policy. For the purposes of this interview, I did want to go deeper into how you self-identify and why you would leave a seemingly safe and prosperous academic life in the West to enter that political mix in Iran. You're an Iranian kid who left in your early 20s. You studied in Sweden. You then did a PhD, postdoc in California. You've worked as an academic in Europe, then at Yale. You've spent almost half your life in the West. This may seem like a strange question, but what leads you to feel as Iranian as you do?
Of course, as someone who grew up in Iran, I have some biases toward my country, and I might care more about some of the problems that we have in Iran, and I think I know the language and I can explain things to people. So on a given day, if I can make a tweet about the problem in Kenya and Iran, or the U.S. and Iran, I might choose to talk about Iran. But if you're asking me if I feel Iranian or American or British, I think I'm Iranian, and I lived too short in different places I moved from Tehran to Tabriz to Lund, Sweden, and then a short period of time Waterloo, Canada, then California, then Florida, and then London. So I was just moving a lot, and that might be an indication of confusion, not being happy with what I'm achieving and wanted more, or wanting to be closer to Iran. But I grew up there. I understand the problem there, and I think there are things that I can do which are beneficial to Iran, beneficial to the developing world, and that part of the world needs more help. There are tons of other people who can do the things I do, or say the things I say, or write the papers I write in this part of the world on issues in this part of the world. But when it comes to stuff on that part of the world, I think there's a big gap, and people like me can help. So I thought I would enjoy doing things for my country, and I tried it. And I'm paying a huge cost for it. Every day I wake up and there are smear campaigns, attacks. Still, I'm getting attacked on my social media. Any post I put on social media, there is something underneath from people inside the country who think I'm a spy, from people on this side of the planet who think I was a traitor and I shouldn't have gone to Iran to help that system, and I had plans to make money and live close to power. So I'm paying that cost, but I think I'm still enjoying doing things for Iran. That might be just an emotional thing. I'm enjoying doing things for the environment.
Isn't that an interesting paradox, what you just said? Because you went back to Iran and took that high profile government job, and you were considered too Western by some. You've said it in this interview, but they just saw you as some Western guy coming in, trying to move in on the action, and thus untrustworthy, if not a spy. And yet, you've had circumstances here in the West where you are the Middle Eastern guy on a panel, or even seen as an agent of the regime in Iran. So, how do you process that paradox that is your life?
I don't know if I have the solution for that, and I still know how I have to navigate through. But I know myself, and I know why I made that decision to go to Iran, and I know why I decided to exit, what the circumstances were, and what drove my decision, and what I accomplished in Iran, what I learned in Iran. So the only thing is that I trust myself, and I continue fight for what I think is right. I might be wrong. I might be totally wrong. That's what we learn in science, that our judgments can be totally wrong, but that's something I have to live with. Yes, when it comes to, when I talk about some of the problems in Iran, for example, people think that I'm justifying the bad actions of the government. If I'm saying that, the decision to do this was right, I'm defending the dictator, or I'm defending a certain group within the system. That mentality is there. I still get stopped at borders. I'm being questioned for the 7 months I spent in Iran, even though at that carrying an Iranian passport, I get stopped at every border. Even though in Iran, in every interrogation, I had to prove to them that I'm not a dual national. I don't have a second passport. So it's a paradox. It's a big cost that I'm paying. But I think anyone who gets into speaking science and speaking about facts and trying to come up with the right narrative would get that.
Well, that's interesting.
Because
that's interesting to me. But what's interesting about this is you're an environmental scientist. You're an environmentalist. I probably have some outdated notion of like environmentalism as benign somehow, but it hasn't always seemed like something that would be dangerous. But given what happened to some of your colleagues in Iran in 2018, it has been. And as someone who's fought on the front lines of the environment in different continents, do you think being an environmentalist in this day and age is inevitably a political struggle?
I think environment has the power to unite. For a long, long time, environment was a safe space. Maybe even the government, the system, let people talk about environmental problems, Lake Urumia, air pollution, this and that. So they don't talk about other matters. But now we are at a stage that environment can unite forces. Whether you are in opposition, whether you are a reformist or a hardliner, left, right in Iran, you care about Lake Urumia. You care about air pollution. You care about this. Whether you're Shia, Sunni, where you come from, you care about these things. And so environment has a strong potential for uniting people against systems. And once you're out and asking for your right to have access to clean drinking water, the recent incident that we have seen in Iran the last few days that everyone is now talking about in Khuzestan, then no one can stop you. People have a hard time saying that you did the right thing for coming out and asking for your water right. So then we get to a stage that the environmental space can get abused by people on both sides. So a system which doesn't trust people always questions you. Why do these people spend so much time, hours actually, in the field trying to save cheetahs? Why are cheetahs so important? We are seeing people dying. Who cares about cheetahs? 50 cheetahs. We don't want them. So you can't explain why you do it, because there is no income, there is no money, there is no return. For a system who has got used to doing things for money, doing things for profit, understanding why environmentalists are doing these things is nonsense. So the environmental space is getting abused. And this is not about Iran. This is again another mistake that we make, and we think it's only Iran which has got paranoid about the environment. I'll give you another example. I had an Egyptian diplomat as a PhD student at Imperial College. We were working on the Nile. 2 years into his PhD, the Egyptian intelligence realized I'm not a UK national. They thought that I was an Iranian British. And once they realized I was Iranian, because they invited me to go to Egypt and I said I can't come, I can't get a visa, they realized I was Iranian. They got paranoid. Because they didn't want an Iranian to have access to Nile data. Now, again, like what we make fun of the Iranian intelligence, thinking that they don't know what's happening. They think we will we don't have access to the data that they're talking about because the satellites are everywhere. We can't collect the data from the satellites. But they don't have the intelligence units, don't have the right, I think, training and education. So they got paranoid. And we had to take action on that. And I even had to, let this student go to my colleague because they couldn't stand my name on his dissertation, and they were so paranoid that the student was under pressure. So that's Egypt. In Israel, we have the same thing. In Iraq, we have the same thing. And so a lot of countries, we are seeing that increasingly the environmental space is becoming problematic. The number of people who have got killed around the world, the number of environmental fighters has been huge, especially in the developing world. So this space is increasingly getting securitized and politicized, unfortunately. When Netanyahu or Donald Trump or Pompeo talks about Iran's water problems, the normal reaction of the system is to say that, okay, now from now on, whoever talks about environmental problems in Iran is in alliance with Donald Trump and Netanyahu, so you're a spy. So sometimes it's people who get caught in the middle of this politics, and I think the innocent people who are in jail, the environmental group, is no exception. One Iranian Canadian died. Now we still, it's a mystery for what happened. They just come and tell us he committed suicide. That's it. And then 8 more people, so one of them now released, but 8 other people have been in jail and who knows, they can go get back to field and help and so on. And these are the people who thought the environment is apolitical. Doing something for cheetahs would not hurt their system. It would be good for the nation, for everyone, for whoever is in power. But it didn't work that way. So that is really, really frustrating. Now, the way to fight that, we have 2 options. Either shut our mouth up and say, okay, they don't let us do anything, this system doesn't let us do anything, or to talk about the truth and speak the truth and fight back and challenge their stories and their narratives, their false narratives. And I think a lot of us can do that without even getting into politics if we care about the future.
That may be another perfect segue. A final question to you, Kaveh. Listening to you and listening to what you've done in the last few years, what motivates you to be so prolific in your work these days? I mean, you're not just focused on water supply and climate and food, but the environmental movement, on death counts in Iran, on game theory, on writing countless articles, being involved in debates. Why be involved in so much of the public discourse? I know I probably sound like your mother at this point, but why put yourself out there so much? you talked about the attacks in social media. Why put yourself out there so much after all you've been through? What's driving you now?
I understand and feel that the things I do are also rewarding and have some impact, because on a daily basis, besides the attacks that I get, I also get a lot of likes or a lot of messages of people who appreciate what I'm doing. I get notes from teachers who thank me and say that the videos I put online were like shown in their classes and the students like them. They ask me for solutions. They ask me for material to share with the student. I still have a lot of colleagues of mine who contact me, ask me questions like, on what to do, and, they check with me if their idea is good or not, when it comes to education, when it comes to solving one problem somewhere. So I think that what I enjoy doing is helping with problem solving. That's the nature of the person who is in academia. And I picked the area I've picked is complex systems, complex human nature systems. So and it was originally water, but then I got into energy, I got to environment, food, now I'm doing even health related work. And with the experience of doing policy related work, I try to combine these things and talk about problems and help with public education, with raising awareness. Not that I know better, but I think even I try to bring people to the table. Started recently the Contemporary Iran Forum show at Yale, and asking people who don't automatically go in front of camera or avoid going to the opposition media channel to come in front of camera and explain things, just share the things that they know and they think should be common knowledge, because a lot of people don't know those things. And so that's the thing I continue to do. And even if I didn't want to do those things, I think now more than before I feel obligated to those things, because if I stop doing things for Iran, I might confirm the story that I was a spy and I did all these things for a reason, and for getting for what they were telling me, for infiltration and going there and changing everything. But I want even the same people to understand the realities and complexities of water management, why we have to reform our water management system, why there are things to be done, and there are so many things that can be done, and why getting people act and make them hopeful would be good for the environment despite all the problems we have. So I think that's the motive, and I'm hoping that I'm helping Iran by doing these things.
It's invigorating, interesting, educational talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Kaveh.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jian.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Kaveh Madani, writer, professor, senior fellow at the Department of Political Science at Yale University. What an interesting guy, Kaveh Madani. I presume we're going to get some response to that interview. He said a lot. There's a lot to say there. I am back here. I've been here, but Keon is back here in the studio. Hi, Keon.
Hi, Jian.
Reza and Shaya. Captain Reza. Groovy Shaya. We have some letters to get through before we're joined by Abjeez, the band. The duo, that is, the sisters from different parts of the world joining us. So Keon, this, I'm very glad you're here to do letters with us. This, the letter of the week thing, however, we've been crowning this letter of the week thing. I mean, the show is only 6 weeks old, so right. It's in its infancy. So, but we we crown the letter of the week thing, but I feel like there should be a prize. First of all, we want people to write in, right? info@roqemedia.com or @roqemedia on our social media platforms. But even when they get the letter of the week, they don't get anything. It's like it's kind of meaningless, right?
I mean, I could personally deliver homemade ghormeh sabzi to them. Do you think that would be sufficient?
I think that would be fantastic, but also impractical.
All I have is time these days. I mean, I'm stuck at home.
So
if you really want them to write in.
So we have. I was thinking about actually, just really, I thought, what if we made Roqe mugs, right?
That works.
We could
too.
hand make. We could buy. We get cheap.
Cheap. I don't.
Oh, you
If
wait,
you want people to write in,
dude, you can't reveal what you're gonna that. I don't know.
I'll think about it. I mean, Ghormeh Sabzi was my best idea. Yours was the mug.
First of all, do you know how to make Ghormeh Sabzi?
Of course I do. Do you know how many hours I spent learning how to make Ghormeh Sabzi this whole quarantine?
Do you make it like
Annually.
asil Ghormeh Sabzi asil?
I don't know what that means. What
Right.
does asil
See,
mean?
the other reason why Kian is here and she's my favorite member of our team is because her Farsi is
stop.
decidedly
The
worse
worst?
than mine. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that.
or,
But that's
or pretty much
debatable.
non-existent.
I don't know. I
Farsi
feel
half
like
mizani?
بله حرف میزنم بهتر از شما.
Oh my god.
برو گم شو.
The worst.
That's not.
I know all the swear words. and
Don't
that's
say
what-
that. You've already. This is. All right. Okay.
We
well,
should do this whole. We should do this whole thing in Farsi. I'll just. really
I'm
test it
ready.
out.
But it's an
I don't
English.
think you are.
Okay, so we'll come up with something for the winners of the letter of the week.
Okay.
But we do want people to write it, info@rockmedia.com or. So why don't we do the letters? We've got to get to Abjeez. So
Let's get to it.
let's go.
So last week, episode 11, we had Hamid Salimian on. He's the chef extraordinaire from Vancouver who has won all these gold medals in the Culinary Olympics. Fascinating stuff. That was terrible.
No, it was good.
It was good?
Yeah.
Okay. It was bad. but
We're
anyway.
still on, by
Yeah,
the way.
Should I start again?
No, that's
you
fine.
Can't start again, Kian. Just keep going.
Damn it. Okay. So we had lots of letters and as well as posts about Hamid and all things food related, of course. I mean, that is what he does.
Yes.
He's a chef. So we had Negin Dusti on YouTube. She said, "Thank you for this interview, Jian. What a pleasure to learn about Chef I was about to say Halim. Chef Hamed Salimian.
Yes.
I felt both very proud and overjoyed as an Iranian to hear about Hamed's love of food and culinary accomplishments. I'm fortunate to call both Vancouver and Toronto home and cannot wait to drive to Granville Island to visit his restaurant and enjoy one of his dishes soon. With
Yes.
a thumbs up.
Very nice. Somebody who appreciates Hamid Salimian. He's got that restaurant that they're hoping to keep open, that they're just doing takeout for now on Granville Island. So if you are in the Vancouver area in Canada, by all means.
For sure. We have Beth Beish. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. From YouTube, she posted, "Food is the great unifier between all cultures. And now I'm hungry. Happy face." Isn't that the truth?
That is the truth.
If there's one thing that brings cultures together, it's food.
Right. By the way, I don't think Beth Beish is from YouTube. She posted
You know
on
what,
YouTube.
Jian? I'm walking out. Everybody
Already?
knows what I mean.
All right. But I just want to make sure she's not I assume, an employee
Well, you
of
never
YouTube.
know.
Right.
She might
She
be.
may be.
Let's
Correct.
look her up.
All right. Keep going. That's fine.
Okay, so we have Amir Nikdel. He mentioned, he wrote to us. saying-
Amir Nikdel.
Nikdel.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting name. Half Iranian, half English, I presume. I love Iranian food.
Which part is the English part?
Nikdel?
Nikdel?
That's not Iranian.
Nick is the.
Nikdel?
Like Willowdale
not
and
Nickdale.
Nickdale, Parkdale, Nickdale, no, Nickdale.
Nikdel.
What does that mean?
Kian, it's not Nickdale. It's Nickdel.
Listen, man. I
knew this was gonna happen. They were gonna get
Nikdel.
Nikdel. There.
Nikdel. My apologies to Amir Nikdel. I mispronounced your name. So
All
anyway.
all Persian. Yeah.
Dearest Amir wrote saying, "I love Iranian food. It is the best food ever. One of the best things about Iranian food is when it comes to vegans or vegetarian people. If you look at many dishes like the Ghormeh Sabzi, all you have to do is take the meat out and add vegetable or just eat it as is. Please don't kill me, lol. I know you love your Ghormeh Sabzi. Don't we all, Amir? Don't we all?
Thank you for that,
Maybe
Amir.
you would have gotten some if that was the prize." You know,
Wait, that's not the letter of the day, is it?
well, it very well could have been. You know, I would pick it based on that alone.
Oh, well, don't you pick it? Is that you pick the letter?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So first of all, is that okay to take out the meat and just then it's just vegetarian? I mean, is ghormeh sabzi if it doesn't have meat in it? I know
Listen,
that's
I like
controversial.
my meat. You're asking the wrong person.
Reza,
Ask
Captain
a
Reza?
vegetarian.
Like that depends on that depends on the person, because some people like wouldn't even eat the food if it's been in the vicinity of meat. Some people are pretty extreme.
Right.
So for those people, they can't just take the meat out.
Right.
And I feel like Kian is kind of right. Like without the meat, ghormeh sabzi is like, I don't know. It wouldn't taste
it's
the
missing
same.
something. I mean, it's still ghormeh sabzi.
It's sabzi.
It's
It's
yeah, exactly. Just fried sabzi.
It's gourmet sabzi.
It's gourmet. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Amir Nickdale. Let's move on. What else you got?
So next we have Saeed Nouri on Instagram. He wrote, "I love you, bro, comma. Now we have a great talk show. Heart, heart, heart."
That's
One
great.
too many hearts, Saeed, but
Thank you,
great
bro.
comment.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate that. Very nice.
All right, so on episode 12, we posted that earlier this week. We had an interview with Bahman Farmanara. I'm a huge fan, by the way, the iconic Iranian filmmaker. This was a remarkable interview given his candor and how brave he is. While in Tehran, taking this chance to speak about his work in the...
He was talking very openly about the current government there, the regime, and which was a brave thing to do while he's in Tehran.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was...
Do you have it? Do you have any letters?
No, that'll be all.
Keon, you
This
do
is
realize
looking
that
great, by the way. It's not a disaster whatsoever.
this
Not
is
at all.
you are a valued team member. However, your job was just to come to
I'm
read
getting-
letters. You've already forgotten what it was.
I'll lock myself out.
Go ahead.
All right,
Go ahead.
so we have Daver Shahidi. I hope I pronounced that right? I did. On Facebook, he wrote, thank you, Jian Ghomeshi, again for a wonderful interview, this time with Bahman Farmanara. And again, thank you for providing the tribune to the gems of the Iranian art, culture, and thinking.
Very nice. Very nice.
So as well, we have Cyrus Khalat Bari.
Khalat Bari.
Khalat Bari.
Khalat
My
Bari.
Farsi's improving so much.
Nickdell.
From YouTube. It doesn't work there.
It's from the same
All of
town.
the YouTube employees have been right again. Yeah.
He wrote, great interview. You get to learn a lot from interviews like this. A great personality and character who never gives up. A true Iranian patriot given his background. Great ending fusion music. I think I am finding myself addicted to Roqe. Yeah. Can't wait to see what's coming up next. Exclamation. Great work. Keep it up, Jian and team. With a lot of emojis.
That's great.
Yeah, it's nice.
I like that.
And even Superman wrote in. I don't know where. I just have the name of Superman. I don't know if he's from YouTube, Instagram, but he wrote, I absolutely love Roqe. Well done, Jian. By any chance, have you considered adding video to your podcast? Like you sitting there in the studio and giving guests can record a video from her conversation with you. That, I believe, will boost your audience numbers. In the current form, to be fairly honest with you, it gets a bit boring after 15 to 20 minutes. Ouch. Also, a Farsi subtitle, maybe. Yeah, okay. What else does he say? Anyways, all in all, I think you and your team are doing a great job. I cannot imagine where this is going to end, but if this is the status quo, it is a big treasure for the Iranian was it diaspora or
Diaspora.
Diaspora. I'm learning so much today. Damn it, Gam.
He said, damn it, Gam, not you. You're not saying that.
Well, yeah,
That's what
yeah.
matters.
Thanks for that clarification.
Superman, thank you.
Yeah.
So damn it, Gam, but the show gets boring after 15 minutes.
That's
Well-
that's a bit of a bipolar criticism.
By the way, is Superman from YouTube or
It doesn't say, Jian. It doesn't say.
Right. No, I
cannot-
think that was I don't know where we got that post. You're the letters person.
Email. I think some of them are.
It was in the email.
Emailed to us. The
So,
ones that are not.
First of all, we have considered video, obviously, but we thought for now it's an audio experience, and as well as Reza and Panta's amazing graphics that are there when we're during the YouTube experience. If you want to see them, but it felt like there's so many of those Zoom chat things now that people are doing. So why not keep this as audio? Theater of the mind, as they would say, for now.
Sounds good.
But thank you, Superman, and damn it, Gam, to you as well.
So we have the letter of the week. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay.
It's from a Jill Hendry. Wow, a non-Iranian person. So she wrote, I just began tuning into Roqe last week and spent much of my time catching up on all of your episodes. I really love it. I have a few friends that are Iranian and the culture in general really interests me. Thank you for doing this. It's great to hear you back on the airwaves doing the thing that you do best. Congratulations to the Roqe team. You're all doing an amazing job. Wow, that was beautiful.
That's really nice. Jill Hendry, you have the letter of the week. We will figure out something that you will eventually get for that.
I guess it's not Ghorma Sabzi,
What-
but
we could-
sorry to disappoint.
Right. Did it occur to you that some of these people are not writing from a 1 kilometer radius of where
I
you
did
live?
not think of that, but I'm
and
sure
if
I can
they're
get
in
creative.
London or Berlin or Los Angeles or
Frozen
Vancouver,
Ghorma Sabzi is still pretty good.
so you're going to deliver frozen Ghorma Sabzi
Now that I
during
think
the
about
pandemic.
it, I might not. That might not be the best idea.
Let's
go with the mug.
But it had heart.
Cheap mug.
It had
did.
heart.
It did.
Keon, thank you. Thank you, Captain Reza. Thank you, Groovy Shaya. This is Roqe. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. While some are inclined to dismiss or ridicule artists when they speak about subjects other than art, others hold that artists often serve as society's conscience. In times of social and political strife, an artist's role becomes particularly important. Given the social and political currents swirling in Iran in the past 4 decades, some musicians in the Iranian diaspora have seriously considered how they can best wield and leverage their potential as artists to bring to light not only social injustices, but other issues and concerns of the society. This is especially noteworthy because musicians who reside in Iran can generally be voiceless due to the extreme limits on freedom of expression and political repression. So, with all of that said, take a listen to this. Some of you in the diaspora may recognize that song. A little taste of the song Geryeh Mard, The Man's Cry. That was just one of the provocative songs on the debut album of my guests today that came out in 2007. They are sisters and the founders of the multilingual Persian-Swedish fusion world alt-pop music band Abjeez. Their lyrics often carry humorous and subversive social, political, and cultural messages, and they've not only been described as the first female-led Persian-speaking reggae ska band of its kind, but pioneers in singing about taboo subjects in Persian language, Iranian culture, and even American foreign policy and the war on terror. Their debut music video was nominated in the short film category at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York City in 2007. It was also selected as the best music video of the year at Link TV's World Music Channel the same year. Since then, Abjeez have been described as one of the most successful Iranian music groups of the 2000s, performing at sold-out concerts across Europe and North America, and they are still embarking on creative new journeys. And today, right now, Abjeez are with Roqe. Melody Safavi joins me from New York City. Hi, Melody.
Hi, Jian.
Great to have you on the program. And Safoura
Thank
Safavi, your sister, joins us from Stockholm, Sweden today. Hi, Safoura.
Yes, I do. Hi. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so happy to get to talk to both of you we're in 3 different places, and we'll try and navigate this conversation. So thank you both for doing this. By the way, have you said hello to each other yet?
Hi, Abjeez.
Actually, we did.
Okay. I don't know how often you're FaceTiming, so.
I mean, I talked to Safoura right before the show, but I can say hi again. Safoura.
Okay. All right. I'm just making sure the sibling unity is off to a good start in this interview. Melody John, first and foremost, you are actually the first guest we've had on from New York City, and it has been achingly hard to watch what's happened there in the last couple of months, especially for me as someone who's living there recently. What have things been like for you, and what are your impressions from what became the epicenter of COVID-19 around the world, New York City?
As you so well mentioned or put it, it's been a very tough time for us in New York. For me personally, it's been a very eye-opening experience, I should say. Corona has forced me to really sit down with myself and, go through my so-called dark sides or dark shadows of my soul. So it's been very, very nice. I mean, I feel more spiritual than ever.
When you talk about eye-opening, what's an example of something that you've learned about, I guess, yourself in this time?
Well, as I told you, I feel like we all have many unresolved personal issues, which we tend to run away from or escape from with daily activities. And when you take away those activities and you can't do them, you just have to sit with yourself.
Right. If there wasn't the devastating side of people dying and hospitals overwhelmed, etc., it would be an amazing social experiment. Like everybody contain yourselves for a couple of months and see what you learn. Have you been in touch with other artists in New York, like in Brooklyn or in New York where you are? What have people been saying? Are they people depressed?
I have many artist friends here. Most of them are really suffering because, especially those who the main source of income is music and art.
Yes.
Some of them don't even know how they're gonna manage, how they're gonna pay their rent. So it's been very tough. But at the same time, this has brought us together in a different way. People are being more compassionate towards each other. I know of communities that have started gathering money to support their friends. We all have to go through the same experience, regardless of our background and our financial situation. And so this has both, in my opinion, it has enlightened us, and it is aligning us also in a way. With each other.
Enlightening and aligning. Let me bring in your sister, Safoura. This is a whole other thing. You're in Stockholm, and many people may know Sweden stands out in its approach to COVID-19. Where you are, primary schools have remained open, restaurants too, though I know tables are set further apart from each other. Nightclubs can operate as long as the manager ensures that people keep an arm's length from one another. What's it been like living in a country that the rest of us, the rest of the world, is looking at either with pity or envy because you've been taking a different approach there?
Well, I think that for me, being partly Swedish, I mean, my mentality is quite Swedish. I was only 5 years old when I moved to Sweden. So for me, it is kind of natural in somehow, like the way Sweden is dealing with this situation. It's a very Swedish way of dealing with the situation, I think. But I of course, I am aware of the critique that comes from outside through friends or media. I noticed that a lot of people have strong opinions about how Sweden is dealing with the situation.
When you say very Swedish, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the notion of trusting citizens to handle this themselves somehow, to be socially responsible?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
because a lot of people are criticizing this and I understand that, because it's a cultural thing, and if you're not from this culture, you can't really grasp that. I think this culture basically teaches us from being children of being our own police.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like people. There are not much people on the street if you compare with how it is usually, of course, and it's more like the attitude of the state. I think how they that they have more trust in the citizen, and this is because of the welfare state. I mean, we are brought up like this.
Right.
Because if this welfare state is going to work as a system, this is a part of it. You know, the trust and working together and seeing each other as a collective.
Right.
This is such a big part of Swedish community and mentality, to talk about us, not about me only. And so I think this is very integrated in us, in our mentality. In general, we're generalizing.
This is really helpful. I mean, that's not something that I've heard, because all we see is sort of very analytical analysis of what Sweden is doing and how many deaths it might create, etc. So to actually hear this from a cultural point of view, from someone who lives there and loves there, is really helpful. That said, you two are in completely different places, and so let me get this straight, because I mean, anybody who's not intimately familiar with the story of Abjeez might be surprised by this. Your sisters, your family, you write and play and perform music together, but you literally live 7 time zones removed from each other. So what's the architecture of navigating this sibling relationship, both family and work, Melody?
It's called telepathy. We work through telepathy. No, just kidding. Well, it's hard. It's been always hard, but if it wasn't because of the internet, I don't think we would be able to work. So actually, on the contrary, we try to keep away from each other as much as we can in order to be able to survive. Duri och dushi. Have you heard about it?
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, jokes aside, it would be much easier for us to work if we were in the same country. And as a matter of fact, most of the songs that we love ourselves that we've done has been made at times when we were together. When we are together, it's a completely different type of communication and collaboration, because it happens in an instant.
Yes.
While when we work in distance, I have to, write something, send to her. She needs to read it. She might not get it at the time that, we are in different zones, physically and mentally. So it's hard, but at the same time, this is our life path. I mean, I'm here. There's a reason that I'm here right now, and there's a reason that Safoura is in Stockholm. We have to also live our own life.
Neither of these two places, New York or Stockholm, are Iran. But you both seem like you are very Iranian. I mean, you both grew up in Iran, but then you've been transplanted all over the world, and quite nomadically so. It's amazing reading about you. Iran, India, Spain, the United States, the UK, Sweden. In all that time, I mean, based on, I've only known you really through your lyrics, your political stances, your football preferences. You seem to always identify as very much so as Iranian. Why is that? Why has that allure remained so strong for you, Safoura, when you say you left there at 5 years old and went to Sweden?
Yes, I think it's because we have had always a very strong bond to family-wise. I mean, as a family, we are very connected with our parents and our brother Sufi, and so we have, and also language I think is a big plays a big part in this, because since we came to Sweden, my parents always spoke Farsi with us at home, for example. A lot of parents start speaking the language of the new country to help their children, but they didn't. They continued speaking Farsi, and so the language and also the age difference, because both my siblings Melody and Sufi are quite much older than me, so they were like teenagers when I was 5 years old. So they already carried the Persian culture in them, like. So we always kept this Persian identity, I guess. Even though I know that I usually say my mentality is Swedish, because I know the way I think is very Swedish. I don't feel like 100% Swedish, of course. I feel I have this Persian connection.
Melody, it's one of the interesting things with this show and talking to people in the Iranian diaspora, that this is something that unites us, that no matter whether you left 2 years ago or whether you've never grown up there like me, there's this umbilical cord with Iran that we can't seem to cut, that we, or not can't seem to, we don't want to cut. How would you answer that question about why the allure is so strong for you as someone who's lived in New York for years or around the world?
Well, I can just talk for myself, and for me, it's been it has to do with the history and the background and my background, like the Iranian history and everything that we as a society have gone through has impacted my life. It's a part of me.
Right.
It's a part of my mentality, and it will always be. Like there are so many beautiful things with our culture, which unfortunately are not being reflected these days, but that are very, very crucial, such as, for instance, our hospitality.
Yeah.
The Persian hospitality is something extremely unique. I haven't seen it anywhere else, to be honest, and I've traveled quite a lot. This is something that is, ingrained in us, and also, like, we have survived so many hardships, and we are still doing, and we are right now going through so much hardship in our country, but we still have that connection, that love, which is, these are all effects of the coronavirus and my isolation.
Right. You're eye-opening, yes.
But,
can I ask you this before? I want to get to the political lyrics more specifically, but just as a question while we're on this question of identity, have you guys ever had pushback from people in Iran or other Iranians who would say, enough, with your political stances or your lyrics, etc. You guys haven't even lived here for a long time. You're not even here. Have you ever heard that kind of criticism, Safoura?
Oh yes, of course. Of course, we've heard that, but we also, I must say, we don't have that many political lyrics. Actually, they are most social critical, and this has been a deliberate choice. Because we feel that what we have wanted to address are questions that we ponder upon ourselves as sisters, and a lot of what we have in our Persian society are like social issues that we need to deal with, and as any culture have these social issues, of course. But so we have deliberately mostly talked about social issues.
Yeah.
But of course we've had critique about that.
But even the social issues, when you write a fun song about Khostegari, I'm sure somebody says, "How dare you?" Right?
No, less actually. To be honest with you, much less. Because the social critic lyrics are also Melody writes the lyrics. They're very like cleverly expressed, I think, because in this sense we are very Swedish in our way of expressing ourselves, because we understand that the situation is complex we're talking about, and we try to be nuanced. How do you say that?
Nuance, yeah.
Have it like in our approach, because of course the situation is complex. But so I think the listener has the opportunity to choose what it wants from the situation, and make their own decision. So less critique when it comes to this social critical. We have had a lot of critique on the way of singing, for example. This is interesting. When we started back in 2005 with this song that you gave an example of, Geriye Mard, Man's Cry, I remember I had a lot of critique, like people was, is this a girl? Is this a boy? Why does she sing like this? It sounds very strange. The Farsi is strange. And this is a kind of critique we got a lot from the beginning, but by time people got used to it, I think, and nowadays people are singing Farsi in many different ways and expressing themselves musically through the voice in more different ways than before.
You both seem very strong, watching you in your videos, or listening to your songs, listening to your lyrics. So Safoura, when you got that kind of criticism in the beginning, did it hurt?
To be honest with you, of course, I'm a very sensitive person, but this kind of critique hasn't really hurt me, because it's a bit like when you have a great passion about something, when there's a fire inside, the critique doesn't hurt because you have such a strong direction, sense of direction. So you just either take it as it makes you even stronger, or you take it as a constructive critique, like, oh, then I have to do it better next time. I think it hurts when it touches your ego, like when you feel that like you're unsure about something, then I think it hurts.
I'm glad you led there to going back to 2005, because I want to ask you guys about the formation of the band and that first album that Hamid, that hit the world with kind of a storm. This female-led Persian band doing the ska reggae in Sweden and taking strong social stances. Melody, when did you know that Abjeez was going to be more than a hobby with your sister?
I think I still don't know if it is more than a hobby, to be honest with you. I mean, for us, this was a way of communicating amongst ourselves, but also to express ourselves as sisters. It's been almost like a game, and if we knew that it would become what it became, I'm not sure if I would even dare to step into this platform.
Why is that?
For instance, I'm not a musician, but I don't know how I dared to stand on a stage for the first time and sing. Since even, Safoura is a real musician. She's trained, she's experienced. But for me, it was like a very new thing. But it's exactly as Safoura says, there was a force within us that pushed us. And I still think that personally I'm growing, I'm learning and growing and experimenting. And this is an ongoing journey.
Safoura, is Melody a real musician?
Define real.
Oh, come on.
Define musician.
I was expecting you to step in and Nejat bedi dige khwahareto.
No. There's no Nejat going on here.
Well, I think you're a musician, and I find this very interesting. And this is something. So I wonder if that's like a cultural trait, or this extreme modesty, especially when we get our artistic inclinations beaten out of us at a young age.
Well, I think in my In my case, I do consider myself an artist. I'm
okay.
just saying that I'm not a classically trained musician.
Right.
I don't play any instruments, and but I mean, at the same time, I'm releasing my own album soon.
Right.
So, like, I don't want to like take away from the positive aspects of myself as an artist, but I'm just saying that we are usually, like, we tend to be raised with a certain mentality that we have to have gone through certain trainings and learning experiences in order to be able to call ourselves an artist or musician.
So on the subject of that 2007 debut record, let me play a little bit of a song from that. This is Abjeez and a song called Democracy.
دموکراسی اسم میوه یه ساله مد شده و سر میشه تو پیاله همچی که نزدیکای فصلش میشه پر میشه تو ویترینا پشت شیشه او ای او ای او ای او خیلی جاها میفروشن نون و بازو تو بسته بندی های جور و واجور اگه نخواه خودتون رو بخوری.
That's Abjeez with the song Democracy. I'm speaking with Safoura Safavi in Stockholm and Melody Safavi in New York City. Safoura, that song Democracy, I mean, that's a good example to me of a strong lyrical song that doesn't really pull punches. We've talked about social versus political lyrics, but this was all new. You guys are putting out this debut record, and you're coming at people with a lot of things: siblings doing ska and reggae, and putting out a song like that. What were the implications for you from the feedback you were getting, say, from Iran?
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about around this song. I will tell you a little bit musically, and I will ask you to ask Melody about the lyrics.
Sure.
Because she can explain that better and had more direct consequences of this song in her life. Music-wise, I can just say that this first album, Hame, it was like a love letter that we wanted to send to Iran. We felt like we had all these fantastic possibilities growing up in Sweden, like expressing ourselves freely, learning about music, and this was a time when there was still very little alternative Persian music, like almost nothing, and so we tried to like experiment to play around with these songs, and purposely, this first album, we did different genres of music. The reason was because we felt like our friends and the people in Iran, they didn't have the opportunity to get access to different kinds of music, because even internet wasn't that broad then at that time. And so this was our way to show, like, hey, you can also try out these things. You can sing reggae in Farsi, you can do ska in Farsi. So the reason we have this different genres, it's because it was our way of sharing what we had received. Then lyric-wise, we had some lyrics that we had written many years before, and some lyrics were written in the moment when we recorded this album. Democracy was one of the lyrics that was very it was written just before like the release of this album, and had very much connection to that time, and it's our first political statement somehow, and we chose the genre reggae because Melody wrote lyrics and I composed for the lyrics, and I felt like reggae is the correct music style to use when expressing this. Because of the associations.
I want to come back to that with the reggae, but first let's go to Melody and the lyrics. So Melody, tell me about that. And then I did hear this story that you've been working. I mean, I knew you were working in the media at that time at Voice of America at VOA, and that Democracy, this song, had some implications for your job there. What happened?
Well, the song was written actually right after the second term of George W. Bush in office, and it was during the Iraq war.
Yes.
And this was, of course, for me, as a musician, as an artist and a human being, it was a very, very difficult time. And this was my way of expressing myself and my view about the situation. I tried to show, both in the lyrics and in the video, we tried to show that how both sides are suffering from the war. But unfortunately, I was considered anti-American at the time, and I was terminated from my job. Yeah.
So wait a minute. VOA, their contention was that you were being anti-American by writing a song that's basically an anti-war song.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story and a little bit complicated. I can't explain in a few words, but at the time, somebody took this video and the song to a senator, a Republican senator, and the senator took it to the Senate, and then there was a discussion about it, and then it went up to the State Department, and it became like a huge thing. And they considered me anti-American. And
there's probably some people who would consider you anti-Iranian. So you're kind of getting a double whammy.
Absolutely.
You're getting it from all sides.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really interesting only because, to a lot of people, I think, in the Iranian diaspora listening to that story, if they didn't know about it already, would kind of go, yeah, well, I guess I could see that happening. But, I mean, Leonard Cohen released a song called Democracy, and the lyrics are very pointed, and no one ever, fired him from a job for it, right? This is something that is reserved for certain kind of people from maybe a certain kind of background. It's interesting. Let me ask you about another song that then, just a few years after that, the Green Movement happens in Iran.
Yeah.
And mass protests break out after the disputed presidential election in 2009. And you guys released this song called Bia. And this was among the very first original songs in support of the Green Movement there. It came out just after the second mass demonstration in Iran. It was posted on YouTube the same day the government brutally cracked down on demonstrators, killed many, including the infamous killing of Neda, which was captured on the cell phone video and widely seen around the world. Let me play a bit of Bia for the audience.
دیگه توی زورخونه ها هم مردمون شریفم پا به رهن با یلو 100 تا هم وزن و حریفم تو با زانو بند و نقاب با تو و کلاهو ناز نفست برادر مردونگیت همین بود بزن بزار بمیرن بشکن بسوزون و در
A little bit of Bia from Abjeez. Melody, what can you tell me about writing that song?
I'm very impressed by your knowledge about this situation. I almost forgot about the time that I wrote this. And it's exactly as you say. We wrote it immediately after the outbreak of the second demonstrations and before Neda was killed, Neda Agha Sultan. May she rest in peace. If we had waited one more day, I'm sure the lyrics would sound much different. At the time, we were asking people to unite. We were asking them to turn towards love and light. But then things changed, and we wrote other songs also after this, which they sound differently.
So the musical style, Safoura, is very interesting because you aren't playing punk rock or angry rock, that sometimes Rage Against the Machine, that sometimes accompanies, angry lyrics or pointed sort of social statements. You've got these chill reggae sounds, and of course, Bob Marley used that kind of genre to send strong social messages, but it still feels like an interesting collision of these statements with this chill reggae melody. Tell me about the roots of your interest in that genre and why, as you said just a few moments ago, you think this is the most appropriate kind of music.
Yeah, I think reggae music is a very special genre in the sense that it is very friendly. I mean, I hardly have met anyone that doesn't like reggae music. If you put a reggae music on, almost everybody will like become relaxed and be happy and chill, and their shoulders go down. You know, it has the extreme quality of like taking the guard down because of its backbeat, because of its history, because of it how it has. I mean, there's a lot of the culture around it. Of course, there's a lot of reasons for that. Analyzing it, but and also because of Bob Marley and which is the incredible great inspiration for a lot of us, especially for me. I think that I chose this style because I felt like this is the right way of expressing that these lyrics are for real. This is what we're meaning. It comes from the heart, and it's supposed to go to the heart. It's not like it's not a range like we want to just be angry and express a feeling. It's a communication. We want to communicate these lyrics. And then I feel like reggae music is the best transportation for that.
Have you guys ever had a conversation where you talk about, I mean, it's clear that you're not in this for megastardom or big material gains or something like that. But with that said, you're singing mostly in Farsi. I know you've done some recent stuff that's also in English, but you sing mostly in Farsi, meaning your audience is mostly going to be the Iranian diaspora or people in Iran. This genre is definitely on the alternative outskirts of Iranian music. And God bless you for doing it, to be doing something. It's pioneering. But have you ever had these conversation with each other where you just went, listen, if we just start doing some 70s style Persian pop, you know, we can score one of those hits, retire to LA, you know, I mean, I'm being serious to a certain extent, you know, you have a lot of conversations as a musician with your bandmates, right? And about the directions of your records. So has that conversation ever happened, Melody?
Yeah. Of course, we've talked about it, but at the end of the day, it's as Safoura says, we never started this band to become rich and famous. The music is a tool for us to express something that we believe in, and if it brings us financial gain, we would love it. I wouldn't be against it, but it's not our focus, our main focus, so to say. But I think Safoura might also have a few words about it.
Safoura?
Yes, I think that one reason we didn't, of course, we had these discussions many times. We were several people, when we had the fixed band for many years, we were several people with very strong-minded people. I think that it was definitely one reason was my stubbornness, because I would never allow that. I mean, we talked about it many times, and I tried really also to like artistically approach that, coming closer to the more maybe towards the traditional music, Persian music, but it didn't come natural for me. And I am a musician, an artist, and my artistic calling is what's leading me forward. If I don't have it, if I don't have that passion or fire or calling, then I don't do it. So I think one reason has been my stubbornness for us not to succeed financially, and I have to take that on my shoulder.
Did you ever have outsiders, like I don't know, a producer or some big financer or somebody come and say to you, like from the community, say, listen, I just need you to cover some gugush and we're in business. Has that ever happened to you guys?
People have always been, I'm very thankful for this, they've always been very respectful when approaching us. They have never told us to do something, but they have suggested us many times. But of course, it hasn't clicked or matched. It hasn't been right for us, the suggestions that has come to us.
I should.
And one more factor
Sure.
I would like to say is that since we are independent artists, since we always financed everything ourselves. I mean, even of course we had some generous sponsorships, sometimes doing videos and other gigs and concerts, which we're extremely grateful for. We have put like all our time and resources to do this. Because of that, we haven't had much more energy, like after producing an album or a video or something, to think more about the structure of it, like think about it in a commercial way or plan, or this is the downside of it, that when we do everything ourselves, we have 100% artistic freedom, but we don't have more energy than our 100%, we don't have more after that. So this has been a complex thing. I don't know if I get through with what I'm trying to say.
No, you've been very clear. I want to know if Melody agrees.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, like, we're not business people. We're artists. And I really wish we had, we still can have sponsors, people that would, like to support us so that we can focus 100% on the artistic aspect of this work. But it's, as Safoura says, it's so tiring, it's so draining, especially if you're not a business-minded person and you want to, try to make that part of it also function. It's very difficult.
Lest anyone get the idea, because of the questions I'm asking, that all you guys do is traffic in social and political lyrics, etc. You do have a whole other component in terms of your lyrics and your music, and some of it being quite celebratory. And you're definitely football fans of Team Melli, the Iranian football team. So in 2014, you released what kind of became this official song dedicated to the team at the World Cup. Let's play a bit of that.
Yeah.
کی میدونست یه روزی میشی یه پا پهلوون میشی مایه یه فخر و سربلندی ایرون هر جای دنیا باشی چه در داخل چه بیرون تو هر حال و هوایی فدای تیم ایرون همه باید بدونن آره همه باید بدونن توی جام جهانی یوز پلنگ ایرانی
That's Abjeez with a shameless promotion of the Iranian football team and the fan base. Tell me about writing a song like that, Safoura.
Well, we were so excited that Iran was in the World Cup, and we wanted to encourage the team, and we wanted to. Everything we do is because we want unity among us Iranians and all people of the world, of course. It's all about love, peace, and understanding when it comes to Abjeez. And so when you have the Team Melli coming to World Cup, it's the perfect situation and opportunity for us to celebrate together without thinking about politics and other stuff that is separating us. So we wanted to celebrate that.
Melody, I think one of the last times, or the only times I've seen you, it was in New York during the the last World Cup, the 2018 World Cup, at a packed bar in Tribeca with probably 1,000 Iranian Team Melli fans in there. We were watching one of the Iran football games. It occurs to me that, there are few moments. Unfortunately, there are few moments when you can visualize, when you can think of a massive group. I mean, other than Mehmooni's or sort of sculpted private events or these kind, that there are a few moments where there's just this this open celebration amongst Iranians. Think about how seldom we actually see that. And the World Cup time is kind of this this tap, this valve that opens, and all of a sudden you see all these other people, and we're there, and a goal gets scored, and there's this delirium, and it almost feels like a catharsis. I mean, it's just a football game, but it's a really big deal, eh?
It is. I wish we had more reasons to celebrate, and I'm sure we will eventually find more reasons. I mean, in the past few years, I noticed that we have different music festivals and art, cultural festivals around the globe. With these are all events that we are creating to celebrate our culture and our history and our community, and these are very beautiful. But unfortunately, we haven't had many of those, except for Nowruz or Yalda, but these are all usually we end up in private gathering with our family.
Whether it's that World Cup song or you had a song called Crossing Borders in 2017 about the U.S. travel ban. You had a song last year about the crackdown on protesters in Iran. You guys just recently wrote, and I saw a little video of a Mother's Day song. You're very reactive in terms of what's happening out there, and coming up with a poignant Abjeez song for it. How does that actually work? Who calls who, and how do you coordinate that? Okay, this is the time when we're going to put out a song about this thing that's happening right now. Safoura?
Yeah, well, usually it has been Melody because that started songs because she writes the lyrics first. But the lyrics are many times comes from things that we discuss as sisters and think about, and maybe experience we live together. We encounter something very difficult, and then Melody comes and I wrote a lyric about this. And so usually it's like that, but it can also be like we were invited for this event for Mother's Day, and we were thinking about playing one of our old songs, but then suddenly I felt like, hey, I've always wanted to write a song for Mom. Maybe this is a good opportunity to do that. And then suddenly I wrote a song and we could perform that one. So it depends a little bit on the situation, but I would say mostly Melody takes the initiative for the songs.
Melody, are the songs prescriptive, or do they come to you? In other words, do you sit down and say, this horrible situation is happening, I need to write about it? Or do you find yourself writing about it and that becomes a song?
Yeah, it comes to me most of the time. I mean, the times that I have been asked to write a song, like if I've been asked to write about a certain topic, it's usually harder. But when I'm just, affected by something, a situation, or if I hear something that has an impact on me, usually the lyrics come to me naturally.
So this year, I know I can't keep you guys here forever, but I have to ask you about what you're both involved in separately right now, because this year simultaneously marks the 15th anniversary of Abjeez, but it's also the year you've separately decided to explore your individual musical paths, and you're both working on solo projects. So before you tell me about the project, Melody, is it scary going solo without the safety valve of your sister alongside?
No, to be honest, it's not scary at all. I'm very, very excited about it. And the reason is that I do have the support of my sister. And without her support, I wouldn't even dare to explore this world.
So you're working.
So,
You're working on a reggae Afro dance hall album, which sounds amazing.
Yes.
What is this album about, or what can we expect?
Well, I've been living in New York as a single woman for the past 10 years, and the neighborhood I live in is mainly Afro-Caribbean. So I've been very influenced by the music of this neighborhood, and I wanted to make a tribute or thank Brooklyn for what it gave me throughout these years. So that's the inspiration. And I worked together with Abjeez's first drummer, Roqe, who is an amazing musician. And this is a collaboration between me and Robin. Hopefully the album will be released within the next few weeks.
Are you singing it in English?
No, it's all in Farsi.
It's in Farsi. Reggae Afro dance hall in Farsi. I
Yes.
can't wait. So then on the other side of the world in Stockholm, Safoura, first of all,
Yes.
you're my hero because you're in a police cover band, right? One of the things you do is, which I think is
I am.
amazing. Although I don't know who your drummer is, but Stuart Copeland's not easy to follow. But but
My drummer is Marcus Bukelon, and he is amazing.
he has to be.
And the guitarist David Dohan, he's also amazing.
And so you're the Persian Swedish Sting, right?
Yes, I am. Stingora.
So what are you? Tell us what you're working on and what your solo record is.
Yes, I am. Actually, I'm not recording a solo album. I am studying right now. I'm taking a master's degree in performing arts. So I am very much lost in the world of philosophy right now, and I'm following my passion as I always have. And of course I play still music, and I write occasionally. I write my songs. I mean, I write poetry every day, and this police cover band is amazing. I love it. I do it because I love it. And but right now my passion lies in philosophy right now, and trying to understand and find new ways of expressing myself and using art in creative ways. This is where I'm at right now.
You know, it's an honor to get to talk to you, both of you, and to do it in this way where we're sort of in three different parts of the world and uniting to have this conversation. And before we go, let me return to something that also unites us, which is our background, our cultural background. You've both been through a lot. You've seen a lot. You've lived in a lot of places around the world. You're both defiantly Iranian, as you've discussed, and you're involved in the diaspora. It's been such a difficult time for Iranians. This year, it's like the COVID outbreak and Iran becoming the one of the first epicenters of it was almost the horrible icing on the horrible cake of so many horrible things that have happened. Where are you guys in terms of your hope for a future, or maybe can you see seeds of hope? Let me start with you, Safoura, and then go to Melody.
Yeah, Jian, I think when I think of what you talk about, what connects us and our Persian heritage, I just get filled with love, extreme sense of love. I really feel like we are one body, and what we are all doing in our different ways is trying to deal with this trauma. None of us. We didn't want it to be the way it is. We didn't want our history to look like this. We have been through trauma, and we are going through very tough times. But I think if we look at our community, everybody's doing something. Everybody's trying to do something to heal, for us all to heal. And I think that's beautiful. And I can't see anything like more beautiful or right than that. I just think we should encourage each other in the fields we are. And I'm honored to talk to you. I love this show you're doing. I we are all doing so many good things to raise awareness. And so that is my hope. I mean, that we have this feeling of community and that we somehow are connected. I think that's it.
That is incredible.
Then just let's continue doing what we're doing, you know?
It's incredibly beautifully said. That
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you said
what
it.
can I say?
I truly mean it. I think, I mean, if you feel like that, it's because this is where we're at, isn't it? I mean, this is what we're doing, all of us. It's this call I'm talking about, this passion. This is it. I mean, we're probably sitting there doing this program because of your call and passion. And I mean, we're all doing this. And when you can see this, we can see this in each other. We should encourage that.
Mm-hmm. That is, it's not just a beautiful thing to say. It's a reminder. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. When I first started even self-identifying as Iranian, because I was in the closet, ethnic closet, through a lot of my childhood years, because it was after the revolution and after the hostage crisis, and I was in North America, and there weren't a lot of people around who were Iranians. And the reason why I came out of that closet ethnically was because of love. You're right. Was because of thinking about our families and thinking about so many beautiful elements of this culture that get drowned in this negative kind of PR campaign. You know that
exactly.
So I really appreciate you saying that. I really do.
Thank you.
Melody, do you want to add anything?
Well, it's hard to say anything else after this beautiful speech. But I think, going through hardship is not a new thing for us Iranians. If we look back at our history, we've been going through we've been attacked so many times. We've been going through wars and so many injustice in different ways, but we have always survived, and we will continue to survive. I think one thing that we should focus on as human beings, I mean, not only Iranians, is to just give each other a chance to speak, to express ourselves, listen to each other, and just remember that we're not going to be here for too long. This journey called life is very short, and let's just be kind to each other and learn and grow together.
Thank you so much, you guys. Be safe. We look forward to hearing more from both of you, and take care of your families and your friends out there. Thank you, Safoura.
Thank you.
Merci, Melody Jan.
Merci.
Khudafis.
Khuda nigahtar. Merci. Bye-bye.
That's Melody Safavi in New York City, her sister Safoura Safavi in Stockholm, Sweden. They are Abjeez. They joined us live from around the world today. It only makes sense to go out on some Abjeez music from the 2017 record Poshul. This is the song Crossing Borders. Thank you so much for listening to Roqe, for supporting Roqe. info@roqemedia.com is where to find us. On YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes. Thank you so much to the amazing little Roqe team. Groovy Shaya, Captain Reza, Kian, Sarah. The whole team. Mizun Bashir. Bye-bye.
Everything seemed fine. The trip was smooth and easy. Then the airplane landed. And lines got crowded and busy. I've got my act together. No much to worry about. The why am I feeling nauseous, feeling guilty, full of doubt. Did I steal somebody's peace? Was it me who packed my own luggage, or did I just offend